Brussels today officially gave the green light to UK-EU trade talks in a major new milestone on the road to Brexit. EU Council President Donald Tusk announced EU leaders had agreed guidelines on how to tackle trade talks following a brief discussion at the summit in Brussels today. No new changes were made to the document, which sets out a vision for a relationship that is as close as possible, but does underline the EU determination to protect its own structures, including the single market. The 27 EU leaders are expected to shortly rubber stamp a transition deal that will keep everything effectively the same from Brexit Day on March 29, 2019, until the end of 2020. The terms of the deal were announced on Monday. Theresa May was not due to take part in the talks, which are only held between the remaining 27 member states. The PM stayed overnight to take part in talks on Donald Trump's steel tariffs. Despite the agreements, Brexiteers warned today it would be folly for Britain to abandon preparations for a no-deal Brexit when EU leaders rubber stamp a transition deal later. Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Brexiteer ringleader on the Tory backbenches, said Britain must be prepared to walk away from talks until a trade deal was finalised. Last night, Mrs May told EU leaders it is their duty to show energy and ambition in negotiating a post-Brexit trade relationship which will be good for both Britain and Europe. Mrs May was greeted with a kiss on the hand by EU negotiator Michel Barnier as she made a surprise return to a summit in Brussels this morning. The Prime Minister has now left the summit as planned following EU-wide talks on Donald Trump's US steel tariffs. The EU Brexit discussion will then take place. Rees-Mogg, chairman of the Tory European Research Group, said abandoning no-deal preparations would be folly. He told Politico, "If we were ready to walk away with no deal, the EU would not be, as it has made no plans to cut spending in the beneficiary states or raise revenue from the other net contributors." That would leave us in a very strong negotiating position. Last night, Mrs May told EU leaders it is their duty to show energy and ambition in negotiating a post-Brexit trade relationship which will be good for both Britain and Europe. Addressing fellow leaders over dinner on Thursday, Mrs May said that compromise on both sides had been required to reach a mutually acceptable legal text on the transition. Britain believes that moving on to trade talks with the EU will help unblock the logjam over the Irish border and prevent the need to implement a backstop solution proposed by Brussels which would keep Northern Ireland in the Customs Union. London is hopeful that a solution to keep Northern Ireland's border with the Republic open will emerge in the context of a deal allowing trade between Britain and the rest of the EU to be as frictionless as possible. Mrs May told the EU 27 leaders, "We have the chance now to create a new dynamic in the talks, to work together to explore workable solutions on Northern Ireland, on our future security cooperation, and in order to ensure the future prosperity of all our people." This is an opportunity it is our duty to take and to enter into with energy and ambition. Irish Taoiseach Leo Varadkar played down suggestions that he wanted the border issue settled by the summer. "Would I like to have it done by June? Yes, absolutely," he said. "But I would rather have the right deal in October rather than any deal in June." Mr. Varadkar said he envisaged a trading relationship between the UK and the EU, so close that many of the measures in the backstop may become unnecessary. Arriving at the summit venue earlier, Mrs May said, "I am looking for a new dynamic in the next stage of negotiations so that we can ensure that we work together to negotiate and develop that strong future economic and security partnership which I believe is in the interests of the UK and the EU." Mr. Barnier, who kissed Mrs May's hand as they met in the entrance lobby of the Europa building in Brussels, said Friday marked a decisive moment in this difficult and extraordinary negotiation. He cautioned that the future partnership negotiated over the coming months must respect the principles and identity of the EU and the single market. Addressing fellow leaders over dinner on Thursday, Mrs May said compromise on both sides had been required to reach a mutually acceptable legal text on the transition. It will see the UK continue to observe EU rules until the end of 2020, while winning the freedom to negotiate and ratify trade deals with outside countries. Britain believes that moving on to trade talks with the EU will help unblock the logjam over the Irish border and prevent the need to implement a backstop solution proposed by Brussels which would keep Northern Ireland in the Customs Union. London is hopeful that a solution to keep Northern Ireland's border with the Republic open will emerge in the context of a deal allowing trade between Britain and the rest of the EU to be as frictionless as possible.